You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good evening, everyone. Who thought we would be having this live stream tonight? Hello, I'm Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're getting ready to watch the college football playoff rankings reaction and react to it in real time. Mike Huesmann is going to join the show in just a few minutes, and whenever he does, we're going to talk to him about the college football playoff. He also wrote an article about the new job opening at North Carolina. Don't worry, Lane Kiffin and Deion Sanders is not on the first hot list, but there are a couple of names that are at least interesting and relevant to the Egg Bowl. So we'll talk about that. But in this situation, this playoff ranking reaction, I just want to give everybody the proper start for this thing. This is totally a so you're telling me there's a chance type situation for Ole Miss to make the playoffs. That's what we're looking for. It's a lottery ticket. It's a wing and a prayer. That is what Ole Miss is looking at. We're going to see exactly where Ole Miss sits at 8 o'clock whenever they start doing it. Right now, the Memphis-Michigan State game, surprisingly, is going slowly as well. So we're going to bring in Mike Huesmann in just a second. Mike Huesmann from Mike Farrell Sports. You know, Mike, I was telling people earlier, you did an article today on the new job opening at North Carolina, and this might be the first job opening that I remember seeing that had no Lane Kiffin or no Deion Sanders on it. Explain the kind of candidates for that job right now and what North Carolina is looking at.
So the two names that are jumping out on everybody's list, not just mine, are John Summerall from Tulane and Jamie Chadwell at Liberty. Both of those guys have had a lot of success at multiple schools. And I think we will see North Carolina go for someone who has been an FBS head coach before. The one exception I did put on the list was Andy Kotelnicki, offensive coordinator at Penn State, formerly at Kansas. He's probably one of those guys that will become a head coach soon and may get to skip the G5. He may get to go right to a P4 job. But overall, I think North Carolina is going to want a guy who is relatively young and has already had success. I think you don't see too many teams repeat hires they've made when they fire someone. So going for an older veteran guy like Mac was probably not something they'll do here. Certainly, every now and again, coaches fall in the lap of places like Mac did. I think it was, he was seemingly comfortable, semi-retired at the time, and said he'd come back and work for them, as he had in the 90s before going to Texas. But I expect a relatively well-known name to take this job, but maybe not an elite name who's successful at the P4, and that's the state of the job. They're not going to be able to pull a guy from an elite job unless that school would want to get rid of a guy, I think.
Yeah, and I also saw Dan Mullen on your list, I believe.
That was not my list, though he is on several of them. The out-of-the-box name on mine was Lincoln Riley. It probably doesn't happen, but the thought process for me is he would be on the hot seat at USC next year. They may not want to pay a buyout to fire him. He may want to start the clock over again with a new job. If both parties could make something happen, he does have that relationship with Jordan already. But Mullen is a guy that's been on multiple people's lists, and he's an interesting one because we see him on a lot of middle-of-the-road P4 jobs. Dan Mullen is on the list, and it doesn't work out, or maybe he turns it down. I wonder if he's really happy doing TV, which he's quite good at. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
But, Andy Kennedy in basketball was really good at it as well, and he went back to UAB with the first thing, smoking.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about the playoff rankings that we're going to see tonight. We're still at about 4 minutes away in the Memphis game for everybody that's watching this. all the pre-rankings that came up had Ole Miss at 14, 13, 15, that range of ballpark, which means this scenario, while it might be a Dumb and Dumber, so you're telling me it's a chance going into rivalry week, there is a path.
There is a path. Yes, we overreacted Saturday and Sunday to, both them and Alabama. They're out. Not so fast. They're unlikely as it may be. There is a chance it happens. I truly believe there are only 5 teams right now who are locked in. No matter what happens, they're in the playoffs. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas. I don't think there's any scenario where the 5 of them don't make it, but there's a lot of leeway with the rest of the remainder of the 7. Now, one of them, Ole Miss is not an option for, and that's the 5th, presumably the G5 team. But that's 6 open spots that a lot could happen.
Yeah, and you have Indiana, which they have Purdue, thank goodness. They're one of the worst Power 5 teams out there. So they are in that lucky situation that they can go, but they're going to likely make the college football playoff without a win against a team with a number against its name.
Yeah. I think you have, going into this weekend, there's Indiana's one of those teams like Tennessee who you win this weekend and you're in. And there's probably not a lot of debate about that.
And it gets interesting because a lot of this movement could happen in the SEC over the weekend. Like, it is no sure thing that Georgia is going to win their game. It's likely. It's not a sure thing. No sure thing that Tennessee is going to go to Vanderbilt and win that game. No sure thing that Alabama is going to beat Auburn.
No.
The most sure thing in the SEC this week, and it's not been a sure thing because Ole Miss is a double-digit favor, has lost twice, is Ole Miss beating Mississippi State. That's the closest to a sure thing on rivalry week. But if 3 of those games go weird, like if Tennessee drops to Vanderbilt, Alabama loses to Auburn, and one other weird thing happens in the top 12, Ole Miss is in the playoff.
Yeah, the odd one in that scenario, and Ole Miss could be a team affected by this, the winner of Clemson, South Carolina, potentially leapfrogging them. Because that is a possibility, even though they beat my Gamecocks handily. It's by far the worst loss South Carolina took. The winner of that South Carolina-Clemson game will have a chance to get in there.
All right, let's take some questions real quick before we take a break while we're waiting on this game to end. Randy Cross asked, if Alabama gets in over Ole Miss, that's going to piss a lot of people off, including myself. They have a shutout loss to Oklahoma. They scored 3 that they do not deserve. That was a bad loss at Oklahoma. And honestly, in these rankings, it would not surprise me, although it's not going to happen. Ole Miss has an argument to be ranked ahead of Alabama in these rankings.
They do. Though this guy's also neglecting the bad loss Ole Miss took to Kentucky.
Yes,
so there's 2 sides to this coin.
Yeah. But that bad loss to Oklahoma was worse than the bad loss against Kentucky, and they were 14 and 15 in the SEC right now.
And even going back to original bowl games, BCS 14 playoff, losing earlier in the year gets forgotten. How you do in November, December matters more, whether it should or not.
Absolutely. James Mendoza has the question. I'm fine if we don't get in because of our losses. Yes, absolutely. Ole Miss has 3 losses. If Ole Miss doesn't make it in, you can't really be mad. But if they try to force feed Alabama, I'm going to be even more upset. 3 points. There's a lot of people upset about that Oklahoma game, and not just the Oklahoma game. Mike, how it looked. It looked bad. It looked like the uniforms reversed in that game.
Yeah, and even down to the offense. I mean, you have Oklahoma running with the QB in A gap, B gap, C gap. That's been Alabama's playbook. I mean, they were doing things we've seen Bama do, and you're right, they did look reversed.
Yeah, it was absolutely weird, and I think that the committee is going to play off that. Like I said, it's going to come down to Kentucky versus Oklahoma, and it might be a situation where the logo on the side of the helmet carries some weight. And I'm not talking about Oklahoma. I'm talking about Oklahoma being on the side of the helmet versus Kentucky.
Yeah.
There's a chance that is going to have some weight. So when we come back, we are going to continue talking about that. There's still 2.5 minutes left in the Memphis-Michigan State game. We'll get back to that and continue our discussion about the playoffs right after this. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. Ole Miss is currently a 26.5-point favorite over the Mississippi State Bulldogs in the Egg Bowl. I am worried about how the Ole Miss team will react. We are about to find out if Ole Miss is going to win by 5 touchdowns or by 2 touchdowns potentially, because if Ole Miss has a real playoff shot, they're going to be locked in for the football game. The FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to place your bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we were talking going into the break about Ole Miss and kind of what we're projecting it's going to look like. There's still about 2.5 minutes left to go in the game, and we're taking your questions via the chat. We got moderator Becky picking them out as well and let us know the ones that we need to look at. But we have about 600 people in the stream right now, and that is really cool stuff. There's a lot of people pretty fired up about what's going on. So, Mike, Zachary Turbis says, hopefully this just can pull the Band-Aid on this season. There's a lot of Ole Miss fans that just wants this over. I think that personally, Ole Miss fans should just expect that it's over and be pleasantly surprised at this point.
Well, I remember I was talking about this with one of my friends yesterday. 2 years ago today, right around this time, a lot of your Ole Miss fans were assured that Lane was going to Auburn, and I was hearing, the death rattle from a lot of your listeners. Oh, he's gone. I said, I don't think so. I think he's staying. So, like that time, maybe there's a chance here, and we can be optimistic.
Yeah, and remember, Ole Miss fans that are watching this video, when Ole Miss won the national championship in baseball, they completely backed into that tournament as the last possible team to get in and proceeded to just beat everybody down. So, really interesting to go in here. Let's see.
Didn't them and State go back-to-back? Am I remembering that right?
Yes. Yeah. State won and Ole Miss won the next year. That was like a nightmare for State whenever they didn't even have it 365 days. Tug Speedman says, so the two options here are A, team who lost 30% of their game that still has a chance to win the national title, or B, players being paid millions of dollars will opt out of the Egg Bowl. Not necessarily the Egg Bowl. I don't think they will opt out because we would have heard that already, but they'll probably opt out of the bowl game. So you're talking about they're either a really good team that has a chance to win the national title with 30% of their games losses, or they're going to opt out of, the Gator Bowl, the ReliaQuest Bowl.
To Tug Speedman, that was a scorcher of a question. I love the name he chose there.
Yeah, and Tug Speedman, is that Tropic Thunder?
Yes, it's Ben Stiller's character.
Yeah, okay. College football is in a bad spot for the future of the sport. Yeah, they've got to get some stuff figured out, Mike. They genuinely do have to get stuff figured out, because if this continues for 5 years, 10 years, the damage may be non-fixable.
You're right, and we've known for a while there are problems. I do find it a little rich that, according to LSU fans, this is it's over the edge, and it only happened this week when they lost Underwood. Like, give me a break. Until it hit home, it wasn't a big deal to you. So they're going overboard a little, but yes, things need to be addressed.
Ryan Hurley asks, any idea the vibe for the locker room for Friday? We going to come out flat or ready to raise hell? What are you hearing? I think it all depends on the rankings that are about to pop up on the scoreboard. If Ole Miss is ranked 15th or 16th, I would expect it to be a 31-17 game. If Ole Miss is 12th, 13th, or 14th, I expect Ole Miss to name their score against Mississippi State.
Yeah, and this is, amateur just eyeballing it, but I expected them to drop about 5 places from where they were last week. So it's going to be right in that range. We don't know.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Like I said, 13 and 14, be very happy. 15 and below, be realistic.
15 stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be really hard to get into the field if you rank 15th or lower. And I realize there's some shenanigans that the committee can do because we all remember what happened to TCU in 2014 to where they were ranked the whole time and then all of a sudden they weren't and didn't do anything wrong. So there is some shenanigans that they can do, but I don't think they're going to do shenanigans for Ole Miss. So let's see. Oh, here's something from Willis. How many years till we see a 16-team playoff? It's 2 years, right? Isn't it?
I believe it's 2. Yeah, like it's sooner than you think. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to go to 16. They're going to set it up to the SEC has 4 automatic spots. The Big Ten has 4 automatic spots, and there's like 2 automatic spots for the other conferences.
And I think what's going to happen right now, we have the 5 conference champions. I think when we go to 16, it's 6 conference champions, and I think that will be to placate the reformed Pac-12 or whatever they're going to call themselves.
All right, there's about a minute left in the basketball game for people that's tuned in as well. Chris Nunez says, Steven, do you think South Carolina gets in over us, even if they beat Clemson?
God,
if it is a close,
don't get my hopes up, Chris.
Yeah.
Don't get my hopes up.
Yeah, if this is the way I think this is going to work. If South Carolina beats Clemson 24-21, if it's a close, tight game, South Carolina's not jumping Ole Miss, even though they beat a team that had a number next to their name. As long as Ole Miss blows out Mississippi State. Any situation for Ole Miss making the playoffs has a 40-burger, 50-burger on Mississippi State's. If it's a 31-28 games, yes, South Carolina would jump Ole Miss in that scenario.
I think you're spot on with that. I do think the style points of the 2 games will matter.
Yeah, even though in the actual bylaws, margin of victory should play no role, but I guarantee you it will in that one.
Yeah.
Cowboys fan, 1992. I'm assuming he's an Oklahoma State fan. He says, what are your thoughts because Ole Miss beat Oklahoma by 13? Yeah, I think that was a very good win for Ole Miss. Oklahoma is a good defensive team. That was the team that showed Ole Miss and got them kind of right. And Ole Miss looked pretty good in the second half. And Oklahoma looked like a completely different ball team against Alabama. Just running the ball. And it wasn't the wishbone, but it looked very 1980s Oklahoma. Quarterback run game and all of that.
I will say one thing for Oklahoma, too, despite the 6-5 disappointing year, Zach Alley, their D coordinator, is still in it for the Broyles. So we have an Oklahoma assistant who could potentially win that award. I don't know that he will, but he's up for it. He's in it.
Yeah, the stream is up to 800 viewers, by the way. We're doing all right. Yeah, when you started, still under a minute, 49 seconds. Memphis is up by 7, so I don't think we're looking at overtime. So we'll see exactly how that goes. James Mendoza says, guarantee Mizzou is ranked higher than we were. I don't know what that means. Mizzou's probably not going to move up because they didn't move down last week. They should have moved down, but they didn't move down.
The one thing, they actually could move up one spot. Army was just ahead of them, so Army could actually drop below them, but it's not going to be tangible to the playoff.
They're not going to drop Army out of the top 25, even though they should, because they got rolled a little bit.
They got rolled, yeah.
And Titans Mafia says, if Bama is ranked ahead of Ole Miss, the CFB committee has no credibility. And
that's not fair. It could go either way.
Yeah, but you also have to remember the audience and the show you're on that one, I guess.
The other one, just thinking about the Mizzou one in my head, Mizzou could potentially jump ahead of Colorado, too. They were in that, now they have 3 losses. They were in that group of teams, too.
Okay, here's one for you. Carl Wally says, could the conference championship games help as well with the playoff rankings depending on who wins and loses? Let's say that Georgia loses to Georgia Tech because Georgia has already clinched their SEC championship game appearance. So they would go to the SEC championship game with 3 losses. Texas A&M beats Texas. Texas A&M would go to the SEC championship game with 3 losses. The loser of that game is not going to the playoffs.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, it's just the way that works. So, yeah, conference championship games can have a little bit of a role. I don't know if they're going to allow it to literally dictate what is going on.
Yeah, the team in that scenario, Texas is probably not all that upset because Texas has a home game then in the opening round. They're 5 or 6. Them and whoever loses between Oregon and Ohio State's 5, and Texas is probably 6th.
I think it's interesting because this is A&M Super Bowl. This is the most expensive college football ticket in the history of college football.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I mean, it's really, man, Memphis, if they don't make this, okay, thank goodness. They're putting up a 3. They had like a 15-point lead, and it was about to get cut to 3.
Oh.
It was like 20 seconds left. It's like, no, we're not doing that game.
I did see a bit of the win they had yesterday, but nothing today.
So, yeah, Titans Mafia, what he was saying, Ole Miss 3 losses are by a combined 13 points, and Bama got beaten one game by 21. I mean, it makes sense, but it's – I guess the best loss is to Tennessee. That's what's propping Alabama up right now. It's amazing that Alabama is going through this. Nick Saban, good gosh, he has to be shaking his head about all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the future of the – super conferences with SEC Big Ten. I mean, with all of these good teams, no one's undefeated. Maybe that's the new norm. Maybe the juggernaut teams he had and Kirby had are going to be a thing of the past. And that could be.
Yeah, with the transfer portal, it definitely makes sense. Anyway, when we come back, we are going to react to the live release of the college football playoff rankings. This Memphis and Michigan State games, 22 seconds left in the game. Memphis has a 6-point lead. It looks like it's going to head out and be okay. So anyway, stick around for that. All right, we're back with Mike Huesmann from Mike Farrell Sports. He has a lot of information on college football coaching. He also does a lot of transfer portal stuff. We're going to utilize him as a resource as the portal window opens up. Mike is really the dude. He is that guy, and we are lucky to have him on our program. So we're talking playoffs and everything's going on. Right now in the SEC, who is probably the best playing team, the best team that is actually playing games right now? I can't figure out who. It might be Georgia, but it wouldn't surprise me if Georgia lost a game.
Might be South Carolina. They haven't lost in a while. Heck, might be Texas. They've only lost one game, and that was to Georgia. You could go a lot of different directions with that question.
It's absolutely
I will say, if I was betting money on one team to win a game, it would be tough to bet against Georgia. Though Carson Beck keeps throwing interceptions, so I don't know.
I got a question for you. If you had to bet your house on one of these 3 Big Ten teams to win a playoff game, and you had to choose between Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana, which one are you going with?
Ohio State. They might be the most talented team in the country.
Okay. Even though that they kind of play with their food from time to time?
Yeah. Penn State could beat a lot of teams. I think they're solid, but I would definitely bet on Ohio State there. The one thing that really scares me about Ohio State, and I think this will bite them in the playoffs, is their O-line is so beat up right now. So going back from the preseason, their O-line right now is the right tackle and 4 guards. So that's how hurt they are. And I don't think they can win 3 playoff games with that intact.
Hey, congratulations to the Memphis Tigers. A big win over the Michigan State Spartans. They're getting ready to go to the rankings show. And Memphis is going to get the winner of Auburn and North Carolina, if there's any Auburn people watching the show right now. So we are pretty good. All right, so we're getting ready for the ranking show, and it's about to get real. We have about 1,000 people in the live stream right now. It's kicking off pretty good. Thank you very much for joining us. It's pretty fantastic. We are going to go probably until 7:45 or so, and I have to get off. I have a hard out to go record the SEC squad show, but by then the rankings should be there. And at the beginning, they put up a graphic, and they just said college football playoff ? And there's Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M on their graphic. So they're expecting those teams to be on there as well. And then another one came up there and said Alabama, Ole Miss, Indiana, and Notre Dame. So we'll see exactly how that goes. There's no volume on this, so I can't hear what they're saying, but it should be pretty interesting. I really hope they don't dilly-dally. And also they put the college football playoff, Clemson or South Carolina. It would be interesting. South Carolina is playing really well right now. Ole Miss wrecking Lenora Sellers in South Carolina, that was right before they got right.
Yep. That when Sellers wasn't in all the time and Robbie Ashford was a train wreck, and then they kind of figured it out after that. The O-line is still a worry for me. I don't know that they can win enough games in a row against good teams. Their sack per dropback rate is one of the worst in the country for their O-line.
Carl Wally asks, is there a scenario where Beck and Ewers stays one more year, or do you think Dart could stay well? No, they're gone.
I think Ewers, there could be a chance that he does if he's injured.
Really? If that happens, they're going to lose Arch Manning.
I think they might lose Ewers instead. That is the thing that wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, you need to expound on that a little bit. Ewers transferring from Texas?
Not basing it off of any hard knowledge. I don't know anything per se, but Sark would have to do a lot to keep both of them on the roster. And it wouldn't be smart for either of those guys to stay at the same school, if you think about it. And he probably sold Arch at the time that you will be the guy after 2 years. So if something has to give and one of them is gone, my guess is Ewers is the guy that's gone, whether it be to the NFL or a different school.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean, it makes sense. I figured that Arch Manning is going to be the quarterback for Texas next year.
Agree.
And I figure, that the SEC has a young quarterback class that is, man, they're going to be hell in 2 years, man.
Yeah. It will be interesting what LSU and Alabama do at the QB position moving forward. And also Auburn, who is seemingly getting stud recruits everywhere.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a good QB this year. And that was one of the main complaints I had last offseason is what are they going to do? For a little bit we thought, Jordan McLeod might go there. Then he went to Texas State, and they just stuck with Thorne, and it surprised me at the time, and it really hasn't worked out.
Have you seen the tweet that obviously it's Iron Bowl week, so they're putting this stuff out, but there's a tweet out there that shows Peyton Thorne's stats right next to Jalen Milrose.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was like, oh man, that's pretty hard to deal with. They're doing the playoff explainer as if everybody doesn't exactly know how this works in the fourth ranked version.
I did see Walter Nolan. Is it Outland Lombardi? He's a finalist for one of the awards.
Yes.
Is it
Nolan? I think it was Outland.
Outland interior line. Yeah, good for him.
Yeah. Very, very good stuff. Now they're getting ready to start their rankings in just a second. Like I said, we're hoping, as an Ole Miss fan, you should be hoping for 14, 13, or 12 in that area, especially if 15 or higher, it's going to be very problematic, and the Egg Bowl is going to look completely different than it does right now. Number 25 is Colorado. The Buffaloes fall to number 25, but not completely out of the poll.
So that was the dude that asked the Missouri question. Missouri's probably ahead of Colorado now. They were not last week. I don't know why we're placating him or why I am, but hey, he got his wish to some extent.
Yeah, Kansas State, number 24. Illinois, number 23.
So Illinois moves up 2 after their dramatic come-from-behind win at Rutgers.
Yes, on the last play of the game.
Wild game. I watched it.
They tried to ice the kicker on a 58-yard kick. Yeah, it was absolutely nuts.
And then it wasn't even Hail Mary. It was a 15-yard square in route, and he gets outside and takes it for a score. Yeah,
it was like the Florida receiver against Tennessee, the Hail Mary that was like 15 yards downfield.
Right. Yes.
Missouri, 21. Missouri comes in at number 21.
UNLV was 22. Skip them. Yep.
A&M fell to number 20.
Okay.
That's about right. They fell 5 spots. It looks like everybody's falling about 5 spots. So I would say it's looking like 14 if they're pretty consistent about it.
UNLV at 22, by the way, is one of those fringe G5 teams that does have a chance. If they beat Boise in the conference title game, UNLV does have a playoff shot.
BYU fell to number 19 after their second consecutive loss.
Yep. And they do not control their own destiny anymore. So
No.
they will need Arizona State or Iowa State to lose, and they'll need to win to make the Big 12 title.
Iowa State, number 18.
Okay. They do control their own destiny in the Big 12.
Yes. Yeah, Iowa State and Arizona State. Good for Arizona State,
Yep.
by the way.
They're playing good right now. Them and Kansas are the two best teams in that conference right now.
Tulane and future North Carolina coach John Sumrall at 9-2 at number
He
17.
might be. He was number one on the list. Yep.
Yeah, John Sumrall is not going to be the G5 level long.
No.
Arizona State, number 16. It's moment of truth time, Rebel fans. It is moment of truth time. Moment of truth time. Come on.
The John Summer one being we're in the SEC now. When
South
Mark
Carolina, number 15.
That's okay. John Summerall will be a guy to watch at Kentucky whenever that job opens up. He's former Kentucky guy, and if I was them, I would look for him to succeed Mark Stoops if you can get him.
Number 14 is an interesting question. Is it going to be Clemson or is it going to be Ole Miss? That is the question. What's going on? South Carolina, 14 is Ole Miss, which means South Carolina needs to beat Clemson, but not by much.
No. Yeah. They
because Clemson's going to be 13.
Yes. Well, SMU be 11-12 then? I'm trying to think where SMU is going to be.
They're probably going to be somewhere in that ballpark as well. There's the graphic down below of what's going on.
Yeah,
everybody's kind of taking their
SMU
time.
SMU ahead of Alabama will be interesting.
Alabama at 13.
Okay, lower than I thought they would be, but hey, maybe that's good to see.
So root for South Carolina, root for Auburn. That's where Ole Miss fans are right now. If that happens, Ole Miss is going to move up to, 12th at that point, because 12 is probably Clemson.
Oh, I think it will have to be. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it has to be because they're not going into the playoff yet.
No.
They're not going to have 3 ACC teams in the top, And if that truly is a one big league, you need to figure out a way to make that a one big league. Clemson's number 12.
Okay.
So that's going to set up the G5 team is likely Boise State. The number 12 team is Arizona State. And then you have like Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia is going to appear. So Alabama is the 4th SEC team right now.
Yeah.
So you need desperately to replace them somehow.
You do. Yeah.
And you need South Carolina to beat Clemson, not by much. You need Auburn to beat Alabama. It doesn't matter what. A 4th will also do that.
Yeah.
And you need Clemson. They're going to take that loss. And then you need, Purdue to jump up against Indiana. You need Notre Dame to fall against USC.
I don't think that matters. I think Notre Dame is probably in regardless of what happens there.
Okay. And
though I brought that up, some people disagreed with me. Some did say if USC absolutely mops them, then there's a chance Notre Dame's out. But
you know that USC, by the way, there's Tennessee lose to Vandy. That would do it.
Yeah, that would. Yes. Yes,
if South Carolina, Auburn, and Tennessee or Vanderbilt wins on Saturday and Ole Miss blows out, because the Ole Miss needs to blow out Mississippi State, which they're in a position to do it. If those results happen, that's the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say Auburn is one of those? I was thinking of all the teams you mentioned.
It's Indiana also they're coming in at number 10. They fell to number 10. Which means if they were to drop the game against Purdue, talk about throw out the records, who knows?
Yeah.
But, in this age of chaos in college football, who knows? So SMU at number 9. I always make the joke every single week. Who would have thought that SMU would have been good in NIL age?
Exactly. Yeah. Though that 9 spot is interesting for them because a loss to Miami in the conference title game could potentially drop them out. Now, last weekend was great for SMU, but there's still a chance they could not make it.
Yeah, number 8 should probably either be Tennessee or Miami. Miami lost to Georgia Tech, who lost to Syracuse. Tennessee's number 8, by the way.
I thought Miami would be ahead of Tennessee.
Yeah, so maybe 7 Miami. I think Syracuse is a chance for some chaos to happen there.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, Ole Miss fans, there's a legit path for Ole Miss to make the college football playoff still. We thought it was over at the end of that Florida game. It's not. It's going to take some work. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be likely, but there is a path. Georgia, number 7. So Miami's coming in at number 6. Oh, wait. It doesn't matter because they're probably listed as the favorite to be the conference champion anyway.
They'd probably be number 3 right now in terms of the bracket.
Yeah. So I don't know where they're going to put them, but let's see. Indiana went down, so there's nobody needed at number 5. That's likely Notre Dame. Number 6 will be Miami. That is the way that works. And then 4 will be Penn State. 3 will be
Texas. Yeah.
2 will be Ohio State. 1 will be Oregon.
The Ducks.
It's likely it's going to go. So let's see. Randy Cross asked the question, with a Miami loss on Saturday, would that drop them out of the rankings? Now, if you lose on the road to Miami with 2 losses, and they're not going to be a conference champion because if they lose the game, it's probably going to be a Clemson SMU match for the conference title, if I'm not mistaken. And
I don't know the Clemson Miami tiebreakers. So, yeah.
Okay.
I do know SMU is in the conference title game. I know that.
So it's either Clemson or Miami in the title game. And Miami with 2 losses, they would have to win the conference title game to make the playoff, which would probably knock SMU out. Or with a 3rd loss, Miami would likely be knocked out as well.
Agree.
So, I think that is working out. They're in good shape. The top 4.
Yeah. So, I was blanking. Yeah, Miami has to win because if they lose, they would have more conference losses because Clemson just has the 1 because their other loss was to Georgia non-con.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, So if Miami loses, they're probably going out of the playoffs because they're not going to be in the conference title game.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And Clemson, if they lose to South Carolina, they're in that conference title game with a chance to play absolute spoiler, essentially, against SMU. It's absolutely nuts. First team out of the tournament is the Clemson Tigers. The second team out is the Alabama Crimson Tide. The third team out is the Ole Miss Rebels. Arizona State obviously gets in as a conference champion. Boise State gets in as the G5 champion. And then you have the playoff seeds that we talked about earlier. Mike, what do you think about these rankings tonight?
I think we learned a lot. And to your specific Ole Miss predicament, it could have been a lot worse for them tonight. They're not in a bad spot right now. Being, like you said, higher than 15, 16 is where you needed to be, and the path appears to be open now. It might be a daunting one, but hopefully for, the Gamecock in me, it's really tough to say this, but for Ole Miss, you want Clemson to win, then you probably want them to lose to SMU in the conference title game, if, that would happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird stuff, and everybody's going to basically think about this over the next 4 days. But the important thing is for Ole Miss fans, you should have a locked-in football team on Friday.
Yeah. How much do you find yourself rooting for Auburn? I can't imagine that's a regular occurrence for you.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting thing, but I'll be rooting for Auburn like crazy, and obviously Diego football at Vanderbilt. I was probably going to root for them anyway in that game.
That's an interesting one. I'm of the mindset. Part of me would like to see Tennessee in the playoff, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because their front seven's really good, and I want to see someone try to run the ball on them. But I don't know why. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Mike Huesmann from Mike Farrell Sports. He stops by and does these rankings reaction show. And if Ole Miss blows out Mississippi State, we'll probably do it again next Tuesday as well. Yep. But thank you very much, Mike, and we'll see you then, bud.
Take care, everybody. See ya.